Hello and welcome to the session Questions for Today, so your Insights tool stack is ready for tomorrow. My name is Emily and I'm an editor here at Quarks. Before we get started, let's quickly go over the ways you can participate in today's discussion. First, you can use the chat tab to interact with attendees during the session. Second, you can use the Q&A tab to submit questions for our speakers during the session. This session is brought to you by User Interviews. Please enjoy the presentation.
Thanks, Emily, and thanks everybody for spending a bit of your day with us. We're very excited to share, hopefully, some practical and tactical ways that you can make a better insight stack, whether you're a team of 2 or 200. Maybe, I don't know if there are any teams of 2,000. If there are, chat me. I would love to know more about where you're working, where there's that many insights professionals. But I'm very excited to share with you a framework that my colleague and friend Liz and her team have been working on. So again, do use that chat or Q&A. We are here to engage with you, not just share the content. So let's get into it. Oh boy, there we go. I'm Ben. I'm the Research Relations Director at User Interviews. That just means I spend a lot of my time thinking about what research and insights professionals are doing. This is part of that work. And thankfully, you won't be hearing very much from me. You'll be hearing from my colleague and friend, Liz. Liz, welcome.
Thanks, Ben. Hi, everyone. Good morning. Good afternoon. I'm Liz White. I am Managing Director of Studio by Buzzback. I have spent the better part of 20 years in insights. A large portion of that was spent designing and leading custom research programs and studies for our client partners. The last 10 years, though, I spent immersed in qualitative research, first by forming the qualitative research function at Buzzback and building that team and capabilities and vetting those partners, and then most recently taking that and translating that digitally to Studio.
Awesome. And you're going to hear more about Studio and Buzzback here in a moment, and certainly User Interviews. So if you have any questions about that, Liz will be sharing a bit more here in a moment. I think it's useful for us to not only share what we're doing, but why we're doing it. So here's a bit of what you can expect today. We're going to talk about the high-level state of tools, platforms, and the sort of tech that helps us do our jobs. We're not going to linger too much because, as you'll see, there's quite a bit to linger on. We're going to share an evaluative framework, a set of questions and steps that you and your team can ask to help you make better decisions about those sorts of tools and platforms to help you do your work. We're going to share 2 stories from research team leaders that help reinforce this. And then we will reveal what ABR means and how it relates to the work that you and your team are doing. Why us? Liz and I, as she said, we both have many decades in the research and insights worlds. We're both on the practitioner side. That is to say, we're both doing research, both in the field and digitally, and we partner with lots of clients. That gives us broad experience across sectors. So whether you are on the agency side, whether you're a solopreneur, or maybe you are working in-house at a large enterprise, we have likely partnered with a team like you before. We're very hands-on. And so the things that we're sharing today, we have actually done. And on the partner and vendor side, we are working with a lot of customers to think about the workflows that we're advocating. So we hope that that experience and exposure from our side gives us a bit of expertise and hopefully gives you some confidence in the things that we're sharing with you today. So let's start with the state of tools. As I said, it's going to be brief, only because there's so much that we could possibly say. I have 2 images, though, that I want to share with you that I think really drive home quite the state of things. Don't worry about squinting. You won't probably be able to see everything. The purpose of this image is to show you just how many tools there are. And this is simply in the user experience research space. This is where I spend a lot of my time helping product, UX, and design teams build better experiences across digital and in-person channels. My colleague Jackie will share the link to our report that we used to generate this. We had so many tools that we decided to create, as you can see in the middle there, a map, kind of organizing it into a kingdom. Again, the idea here, or the thing to take away here, is that there are so many tools, from both collecting, recruiting, all the way to analyzing and sharing and repositorying. But of course, that's just one part of the insights world. There's also here in the res tech landscape, this is their 2024, I think, Liz, landscape. And so we have hundreds more. I was going to try and count all of them between this one and this one. I couldn't. Suffice to say, if you're like Liz and I, you've probably felt a bit or more than a bit of whelm in trying to identify the constellation of tools that are on offer, parse what they actually do, and then try to make sense of it for your team. So if you're feeling that whelm, then stay tuned, because we're going to be sharing a bit of a framework for helping you parsing through that. Now, Liz, you have been thinking through these various tool stacks and the ecosystem therein in 4 layers. Can you walk us through what these layers are?
Yeah, so those maps are a really good starting point when we think about the state of the landscape today. One of the things that is interesting is if you were to do kind of a market landscape audit, maybe about 10 years ago, 90% of what you would have seen would have been agencies. Now, the difference there would be the size of the agency. So you would have the big 4, you would have anything down to small boutique shops, and then kind of a smattering in between. But the lion's share of the market was really clustered around strategic agencies. Then we had this tech boom that kind of created this overcorrection for that. And we had a flood of platforms, some of which are represented in those maps, come out and really, kind of on the pro side, really put research in the hands of the user and the practitioner. And so from that standpoint, it was wonderful. It allowed you to really be in control of your research and not be beholden to agencies. But it also kind of created some friction as well. So that that onus of being in control also caused a bit of burden. You were responsible for everything. And depending on who you are, sometimes you were given the keys to a car that you didn't really know how to drive. And then kind of supporting that were these specialized tools that would emerge that were really fit for purpose and that would solve for specific workflows that you needed in order to get your research done. But what that meant, and that's kind of still the case today, is that we have this kind of big bifurcation of solutions within our space. So we have agencies on one end, and you have these platforms on another, and this like big blue ocean in between. And one of the things that isn't really represented and that isn't really talked about enough, in my opinion, is this insights enablement option that allows somebody to tap into something that has kind of strung together all of these 3 layers. So strung together the strategic agency benefit and what you would be getting from that, platforms and specialized tools, and bringing together kind of that comprehensive solution and experience. And that kind of takes you right up the middle, and it bridges that gap between the 2 ends of the spectrum that currently exist in the landscape.
And I'm glad that you ended on the middle ground, Liz, because from our perspective, we're a SaaS tool, and yet so many companies are trying to democratize, enable, or empower, whatever the term is, their sort of non-researchers, and I use quotes here, to broadly define either stakeholder partners, whether those are product engineering folks or junior researchers, but the tool can only go so far. So I'm really glad that you talked about expert support, because we are asking, or rather hearing from our clients and customers, that the tech is good and it's getting them between 60 and 75% of the way there, but they still want that other set of eyes. And so I'm wondering if you might walk us through the studio model, or rather studio by Buzzback model, and how that combination of solid tech but with expert oversight or support comes together.
Yeah, so that's really what we set out to do when we came out with Studio. And so it really was built to orchestrate all of these different elements in the qualitative space that historically have been very fragmented and have created a very laborious end-to-end experience when you are standing up a piece of qual. And to be able to bring together all of the pieces and go through a pretty rigorous vetting process, which is what kind of ties us to the topic today of that process that we in fact went through in order to create this toolkit that is specifically for qualitative research. So within Studio, we have vetted different fieldwork platforms, recruiting partners, user interviews being one of them that are in there, and also expert qualitative talent, both moderators, facilitators, strategists, and bringing all of that together in one seamless platform for that end-to-end experience. And so one of the things that we had to do when we were starting out was take a look at that map that existed and say, okay, where do we start? And how do we go through this process? And how do we vet all of the potential platform solutions that could be a part of Studio? And how do we build the right tech stack for what we were trying to achieve? And so I actually went back to my notes last night to take a look. We vetted 66 different fieldwork hosting platforms and 63 different recruiting and panel partners to integrate into Studio. And so with those types of numbers, you have to have some kind of framework. Otherwise, it's really hard to distill all of that and to make concrete and sound decisions based on what you're trying to achieve and who is that right partner that is going to help you get there. Yeah. So, hopefully whoever is listening today, like you said, this is a framework that no matter what size of business you are, no matter where you sit in the spectrum of insights, this framework that we applied and that we used as we built out Studio is also helpful and relevant to you as well as you think about your own tool stack and your own insights toolkit for 2026.
Yeah, and it's a good time to be doing it. If you're watching this on demand, it's mid-November, and so maybe budgets are still a little squishy, and so it's a good time for you to, at the very least, be thinking about the questions that you're using or the frameworks that you have or don't have in place to guide those questions. So Liz, let's jump into that vetting framework since that's the big takeaway for today. I'm wondering if you could start with some of the things that you experienced when you were meeting with either sales development reps or maybe you were playing around with the tool itself around the sort of whether or not the vibes you were getting of the tool felt like they knew their stuff. What did you mean when you shared this questions that matter slide here?
Yeah. So actually, before we get into the questions, if I was to take a step back and actually think about like, what was my starting point? Like, where was I mentally when we got going? I do think that there is a lot to be said for mindset and to be embarking on this journey in the right mindset. And one of the things that sometimes I even need to remind myself when we are going out and we're exploring and we're vetting is that at the end of the day, we are all researchers. We ask questions, we think analytically, we think critically. We are always in the pursuit of what will enable us to get what we need at the end of the day. And so to be applying those same skill sets and to be looking at all of these platforms through the lens of a researcher and kind of having that mindset and orienting myself there first, that then allows me to kind of kick off the journey and to start asking my questions and to be listening with that analytic and critical mindset that's so important when you have hundreds and hundreds of platforms to kind of weed through. So I always start with mindset. And then after that, if I was to kind of look back and distill the questions that we would be consistently asking of the vendor partners as we were going through that process, you can really boil it all down to like 3 key questions. And some of those questions are external facing and some of them are internal facing. And that's okay too. I think you want to have a little bit of both as you're going through your evaluation framework and you're thinking about your solutions. So, first one is, are they speaking your language? We'll talk about what that really means and what that meant to us, at least when we were going through that process. The second is kind of looking at it and seeing, are they trying to be all things to all people, or is there a pursuit of excellence in a certain space and a certain function? And the third is kind of the inward facing one, which is, what is your evaluation process? And thinking through the different components of that then allow you to not just go off of vibes, allow you to really critically assess to see if the fit is there.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you had that last one, because what Liz and I are going to be sharing is, what in our anecdotes might be what worked for us or our teams or our clients, but it is really important that you start with your own needs, whether you're, again, internal or supporting clients external. We can't give you the answers. We can give you ways to get answers. But let's start with the speaking of the language.
Yeah. So first, what that meant for me and what that meant for us as we were setting out was I always look at the founders. I look at the leadership team. I look at the folks that are setting the strategic direction for the platform, and to see what are they bringing to the table. What I want to see is subject matter experts, especially in research. For all of us, we show up bringing our past experiences and education and understanding to the roles that we have today. So I want to see somebody who has deep expertise in insights and analytics, depending on the platform, that are guiding the strategic direction. And secondarily, but I think it's also important, is thinking about the service element to the platform and that solution. We all kind of just came off of a year conference circuit where we listened to presentations, oftentimes talking about the tech, but then saying, hey, don't worry, there's still a person there. There's still somebody there to support you. And to me, I never want to see service as an afterthought. I actually want to see that embedded into the fiber of the platform, because no matter how much we want to DIY or self-serve, service is still critical in our line of work. And so to me, that's kind of the way which I was looking at, do they speak your language? Because I think that it is reflected then in the platform and the features and what's available to you. And so once you start there, then these kind of red flags and green flags emerge. And so to me, red flags were always things like pitches that just hyper focused on speed, or that was this oversimplification of our space. It's not simple. And I think there is a lot of watering down that makes it seem as if insights is just this volley of question and answer and question and answer. And it really is more nuanced and complex than that. And so to me, that just shows that you don't understand the space in that deep way that I need you to. Features and things that as researchers we would expect to be able to do, because those are table stakes. The worst is when you get in there to try it and you expect to be able to do something really basic and you can't. And so those things tend to then emerge that all fall under that umbrella of, do they speak your language? So to me, green flags are, this is being built and led by people who understand my world, who understand insights and research and analytics, that are baking in methodological guidance and service along the way. Because no matter who you are, you will hit a point in which you need that. You need that guidance and expertise to ensure the success of whatever the research is that you're trying to launch and kick off.
Yeah. And as an example, or rather so if those are the questions and the ways that you can get a sense of the extent to which the tool or the founders behind it or the builders behind it are invested in and know about research. Something else that, at least for us on the user interview side of the space, bump into is often teams, especially teams with either small to medium budgets or even enterprise companies who have bigger budgets, run into the all-in-one flaws, or flaw-in-one, as I've written here. And that is essentially where some tool tries to be the Swiss Army knife of insights research broadly defined. They try to support every phase of the research from, now that AI is being sort of sprinkled into more tools, I'm seeing all-in-ones say that they can use AI to design your interview guide. We'll use, our panel that they don't really describe much about to recruit. They have some sort of fieldwork capability. And then, of course, there's an analysis and a share out. What I have found working about a decade on the vendor and research tool side of things is that And I'm grateful for Liz for letting me keep this in. It's meh in most as opposed to all in one. They may start out as a tool that focuses on testing, or maybe they're an in-app monitoring tool, and they sort of kludge on all these other things because either they think that that's the way that they can up their subscription price, or they're hearing from their current customers that there are other pain points that they don't currently solve. And instead of just getting better at what they started doing, instead of just really drilling down and trying to become best in class, they try to become more and more and more, and it just reduces the quality across the bar. And so,
Totally.
for example, at User Interviews, we just focus on what our founders call the participant layer. And so that's recruitment, screening, participant scheduling, incentives, and that's it. We do use artificial intelligence and large language models, but we use it in service of that mission. And so we have an algorithm that matches participants with projects on the back end. We don't need to bother you, the researcher, with what's going on. If you want to know, you can ask us. We also are focusing a lot on fraud detection because, again, that is a big part of making sure that the participant layer is as smooth and as positive as possible. And so you need to ask your questions, or the questions of your team. What are your core research jobs? Think of sort of building a tech stack as a jobs to be done sort of framework. We'll get to that in a moment. What do you need to do? Are you on a more quantitatively oriented team where you really need a best-in-class survey tool, or you need a very robust analytics platform? Are you more qualitatively minded? And so you need something that can help organize interviews or moderated sessions. And then start asking both the questions that Liz featured about, do they know their stuff? And then do they know the stuff that you need them to know? And so I would really caution you against thinking that you can put all of your chips, all of your budget into a single tool, because I've heard from so many research leaders that even though it seems like the marketing works out, it often doesn't. Liz, I don't know if there's anything you want to add there.
Yeah, and I think that that's what we appreciated about you all when we were building our partner ecosystem within Studio. And so for us, our mindset and approach was, instead of aligning with one partner who is everything to everyone, we would rather and prefer, and this is what we've done and what our users appreciate about Studio, is we would rather create a unique ecosystem that allows a user to access best in class, either tools or experts for qualitative research. And so to really hone in on that, to specialize in qual and to specialize in building a toolkit that really brings in who we consider to be best in class in their respective spaces, and build that partner ecosystem layer within Studio versus trying to be all things to all people. And the same is true when we were building out Studio. We could have built our own panel and built our own hosting framework, and we didn't intentionally. We felt that there was more power and value in aligning strategically with partners that thought like we did, and enabled our users then to access these best-in-class solutions at their fingertips, all within our platform.
Yeah. So that's the second part of our vetting framework. So what do they know? What do they try to do? And then the last one, the last sort of bucket here, is your own internal process. So take us through this, Liz.
Yeah, so I'll do this one quickly because I want to get to the sound bites of our research leaders, because I think it'll be helpful to the folks listening in. But one of the things that I'm always a big fan of is doing for yourself what you do for others. And so what that means in this context is often we are supporting our client partners or our stakeholders or our brand and marketing partners to understand the landscape of the category that you are serving. And so there are different need-based framework that we often apply in research, jobs to be done being one of them, but to kind of take a page out of some of the playbooks that you do in service of your business and actually apply that to this vetting process. And so one of the things that I really like about jobs to be done is that it's not just about the features. And so while the functional is one layer to it all, there is also the emotional and the benefit outcome, which is the reality. It just is the reality of that also being components that you have to care for. Yeah. So we did build out, and we're sharing with this, with everyone who's listening today, a handout that really breaks down these different components. It's what we use as we go through and build out our toolkit. It is a page out of the Jobs to Be Done framework. Hopefully this is helpful for everyone, but I would encourage you to make it your own, especially when it comes to how you're weighting each of the elements. Those were the things that were important to us, but there may be different things that are important to you. So this is a leave behind that hopefully will be helpful to everyone. But again, I encourage you to kind of make it your own.
Yeah. And I'm so grateful for the studio team for sharing that with us. It is in the handout section. We've made it as it's an Excel sheet, so you should be able to edit as you want, and we'll share it out with anyone who's watching this on demand so that you have that as well. Okay, let's, with our remaining time, wow, the countdown clock has started. That'll get you going. Okay, we've got 2 executive stories. We'll make them quick. The first one is from Calendly. Maybe you use that to schedule. Gordon is their research manager. They're a 2-person team to support all of Calendly. They're mostly their product design and engineering teams. They're at a $3 billion valuation, and to get there, they have a lot of questions. And so recently I sat down with Gordon to ask how he's building his own tool stack. And here is how he describes what it is that he or the questions that he's asking when he is building a team. So let me see if I can get this on the screen and play this.
We are at the stage of not incredibly scrappy, but also not the most mature, biggest, Google type research team at Calendly. And that's why we've started to go a bit more towards the BYO, because we have found that we're getting a greater variety and depth of questions across the organization, across the business, which requires a richer set of methodologies and being able to actually do those methodologies very well. And so sometimes it's better for us to get that specialized tool that does that methodology particularly well. And we as a research team can manage which tool to access.
And so for Gordon, his team is more analytics driven because they have so many people visiting their homepage. And so the product questions or the questions that his leadership are asking require a different set of tools. And so for him, no one tool could do all of it. So they use a combination of an in-app survey, and then they use our tool, user interviews, to kind of build their own panel. So again, an example of how a scrappier team who has a large variety of questions needs to build their own because they're just not quite sure what they're going to get the next day. Liz, you want to set up our next executive stakeholder example? I'm going to pull up the audio here whenever you're ready.
Yeah, so this kind of represents the other end of the spectrum. So there may be some listeners where you identify with Gordon. You're a team of 1 or 2. You have to be lean and scrappy as you build out your toolkit and think about how that happens in a really agile way. The other ends of the spectrum is Jeff at Verizon, who has a different world and a different reality. There are different resources available to him. There, though, comes different challenges and different problems that he needs to solve for based on the enormous learning plan that they have, and also the enormous amount of data that they sit on. And how do you actually do something meaningful with that data and design your tool stack around that?
So here's Jeff.
For me, I start by looking at defining the ends of the spectrum of insight. And on one hand, it's 100% quantitative data and analytics. Because more and more data is becoming available, the tools are becoming more sophisticated in terms of how we can just interpret data and extract insight. And on the other side, I want to balance that with the truth of real people. So for me, I define the 2 ends of the spectrum first, which on one hand is real interviews with real people, and on the other hand is getting as massive and quantitative and predictive as I can. Then I fill in between there. The other thing is everyone is just kind of asked to do things faster and leaner. And what that means for me is standardization is actually our friend, not only for faster, but also for greater insight. And so I'm really leaning towards more of that insights engine. We look at trends and we plan for really robust integrations. So being able to do really lean survey research that connects into large data sets. That same lean survey triggers the need to go off and do really rich qual to bring that to life.
And so Jeff, as you can hear there, he's talking about not just the specific tools, but an ecosystem, because he's enabling a whole host of people to do a whole host of things. And you'll get that audio in our follow along, but I just want to make sure, Liz, that we have time for you to walk through the ABR, which is always be researching. And so
always researching. It's my favorite acronym. I'm coining that. So for me, it is something that I really do try to live by in my professional life, is always be researching. And I would encourage everyone to be doing that as well. And so as we wrap today, I think the things that we would love to leave you with is that mindset of always be researching, to really be starting there as you embark on your journey to define that toolkit that is right for your needs and your environment, and to be asking a core set of questions. What job am I hiring this tool for? What would success look like, when we map that out and we map out new tool integration and really actually define those KPIs? Is my hypothesis right? How will I test that hypothesis? And what can prove me wrong? Because we're all researchers, and sometimes you test a hypothesis and you're proven wrong. And so how do you pivot? What happens there? Yeah. So that's what my final call that I would leave everyone with is always be researching.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Liz. It's great to peel back a bit of the layers on how you did it. Here is where you can connect with us and learn more about both Studio by Buzzback and user interviews. Thanks to Quarks, thanks to you, and hopefully you'll be building tool stacks that meet your team in 2026 and beyond. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.